Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly Effectory webinar series. My name is Arjen Swank. I'm the host again for this week. And today we have a very special guest. He's part of my long-term relation network for Effectory. And I met him first in 2008. His name is Mark Tigchelaar. He's a TEDx speaker, international expert, and author of multiple books on the topics of focus management and productivity. And I'm very happy that he will share in the next few, let's say 30 minutes, about how you can remain focused and how you can remain productive in these challenging times. Now more than ever, with your cats, your dogs, your kids, your wife or partner running around, how do you keep your focus and how do you make sure that you get your work done? That's what Mark will talk about, and he will share valuable lessons and a few tips and practical advice on how to make that work. So Mark, I'm very happy that you're here. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm excited.
Great. We'll start with your presentation in a few minutes. I'm just curious, how have these weeks been for you?
Well, for sure, everyone tries to find his or her own rhythm. For me personally, we just had a kid. So our newborn son, thanks, is just a week old. So for sure, we have to find a new rhythm. And that's for everyone, I think, pretty similar. You have to find a new rhythm in the Corona crisis. How do you work? How do you recharge? How do you stay focused? But I'm more than happy to share all the tactics and all the insights from neuroscience, how you can accomplish that.
Great. And I can imagine it's tough. Well, I mean, I'm talking about running around with kids, but yeah, a baby sleeping during the day, crying during the night. That's my experience sometimes.
Yeah.
That's maybe even tougher, I guess.
Yeah, it has its challenges for sure. And sleep-wise, it has an effect. So the key question is, how do you recharge during the other moments?
Yeah.
But once again, neuroscience can be of rescue here. And what I love to do today is to translate the newest insights from neuroscience into practical tips that you can apply directly in your personal life and also in your work life. So I'm happy to share the models and once again, the practical insights that we can apply immediately if you want to.
Okay, sounds good. Just for the audience, a practical reminder, you'll receive the recording of this webinar in your email. So there's a link in the follow-up email, and you can always see it on the YouTube channel of Effectory or find it via our website, effectory.com. So you can always look back, share it with your friends, colleagues, family, if you think that this information, of course, is valuable. And if you want, you can sign up for next week as well. Just stay with us for now, and at the end, we'll share the latest speakers for the next coming weeks as well. But for now, I'm really happy and excited to have you here, Mark. So yeah, please take it away.
Cool. Just checking, is my slide, can everyone see my slide?
Yeah, we can see it, yeah.
Cool, let's rock and roll. So focus. So before we talk about focus, I want to first talk about distraction to be clear on what's the definition of focus and what's the topic we're going to talk about. And the first elements I'd like to show you is we call this the flow curve. And the flow curve shows how your productivity works in relation to your effort. And the first blue line is in three parts. You have your starting up time. You need to put your most energy, your most effort to get into the zone, to get into flow, get into focus. In the center, you have flow or focus, whatever you want to call it. And the last part is, well, you're still working, but your return on investment is quite low. You're working pretty hard, the effort is high, and the effect or productivity is low. A key component of focus is how do you stay in the center? How do you make sure you maximize your productivity and lowering your stress? And it has to do with an element. What happens is distraction. So let's say I'm start working on an article. Let's say a complex task that I really need to crack my skull over. In the first few minutes, you need to put all your energy, but what happens if you're interrupted by a phone call, a coworker or a child or your partner? You do 2 steps back. And this can be really challenging. If we zoom in on the task switch, this is what happens in your brain. So let's say you're working on an article. Let's use that as an example. And now you're getting a text message, a WhatsApp message from a friend. Quick message, might only take you 5 seconds to answer it. And we usually see it from a time perspective. Oh, it only requires 5 seconds of my time. Let's do it straight away. It's out of my mind, and he or she has directly answered his or her question. So we all benefit. However, we're not talking about a time price we're paying here. It's a brain capacity thing. The moment you're switching your attention, and this is the key component, your brain is split in two. Part of your brain tries to answer that question, while the other part of your brain still needs to let go of the previous information, the task that you were doing. If you continue on with the original task, same thing happens. Part of your brain still needs to let go of that single WhatsApp message, while the other part of your brain tries to refine, where was I? It means your IQ drops with at least 10 points. To give you a comparison, if you're not sleeping for an entire night, you're getting the same drop in IQ. It also means an increased level in stress, in cortisol. You might know that hormone, cortisol, the stress hormone. So whenever you're switching your attention, you're becoming less smart, let's put it that way, your stress level will increase, and for sure your productivity drops. So the key component, or the key game, the whole game of focus, is to minimize task switching without missing a thing in the hectic world we're living in. This is the game. So the definition, as you can see here, is a continuous period without change in conscious attention. So if you talk about focus, we all need to talk about, or we think we need to talk about, why do we switch in the first place? By working with over 100,000 professionals, and mainly also a lot of professional athletes, we found out there are only 4 reasons why we're switching with our attention, and therefore we're losing the game. And before I'm on the concentration leaks, we call it the concentration leaks, before we dive deep into that topic, I want to show you how your brain works, because when you know your brain in a nutshell, it becomes easier to understand focus, the concentration leaks, and becoming more resilient against stress, focus, etc. This is your brain in a nutshell. It's a simple diagram. It took us 2.5 years to put up this framework, because this is all we talk about with 80 scientists, and they all have their own islands of wisdom, and we put it all together in one holistic model. And the first thing that I want to walk you through is the waterline. Above the waterline, below the waterline, your conscious attention and your unconscious brain or unconscious attention. Per second, we get 11 million bytes of information. Only 40 bytes, not 40,000, but just 40 bytes, so 0.003% of the information that's entering your brain is sent to our conscious awareness, your conscious mind. In your conscious mind, you can see it as your working memory or short-term memory, your awareness, whatever you want to call it, is your forehead in essence, your prefrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain where you really do your thinking work. If you're bombarded with 11 million bytes of information, you will go mental. You couldn't process the information. So there's a filter. And the filter, in essence, focus, we call that your personal assistant as a metaphor. And compare it in an open office. Let's say you're working in an open office compared to working in a cubicle or a closed office. Your personal assistant sits in front of a closed office and determines which of those distractions is allowed to get in and which of those distractions isn't allowed. And the best way to explain it, maybe you have a similar experience. You're in a cocktail party setting, in a bar, you're having a chat with someone, you're having a nice chat, but at some point you're hearing your name and the conversation from the neighbors. What happens to your attention? Floop, instantly listening to the other conversation. The funny thing is, your name was not called out any louder than the rest of the conversation. So why is it that your brain hears your name, but not the rest of the information? Well, it turns out, this is a key component, your brain, the information of the neighbors entered your brain completely. The only thing that was relevant to you, in this case your name, was sent to your conscious awareness. This is focus. Focus is nothing more than a filter. This is the main reason why most of us find it difficult to work in an open office, because there are relevant distractions like your name of co-workers, name of clients, but most of us can work perfectly in a coffee company. Same amount of noise, less relevant. Make sense? If you look at the type of distractions, well, in essence, there are only 2 types of distractions. You have the external distractions, your phone, your co-workers, maybe children, maybe your partner, maybe pets, and you have the internal distractors, and those are more dominant. The internal distractors are tasks that you need to do. Oh, I need to call Peter, or emotions. oh, I had a phone call yesterday that didn't go well. The emotion could linger in your mind like a boomerang, keeps coming back. Or it could be new ideas, creativity, solutions for challenges. This is how your brain works. And as you can see, there are little icons, and icons represent the 4 concentration leaks. The first concentration leak, it could be too little, we call it engagement. If a task is too boring, if I speak at this pace for 30 minutes, well, within a second or so, you're going to zoom out and going to do other things. So if it's too boring, too slow, or too simple, your brain will distract itself and once again switch to another thing. It could also be, and this is located in the personal assistant, that there's the little brain fuel. Your brain needs fuel to operate. Just need to be gas in your car. The gasoline of your brain is noradrenaline and acetylcholine. Your brain needs fuel in order to think. Without fuel, the personal assistant falls asleep, and therefore you could easily be distracted by everything, like a mosquito flying by. The bottom 2, external stimuli make sense, like your phone, coworkers, etc. And internal stimuli is your head is too full. This is the core. So to put simply, this is the 4 concentration leaks: too little engagement, too boring; too little fuel, your brain hasn't enough fuel to think; your head is too full, too many internal stimuli; or your environment is too loud, too noisy. So this is a spectrum, and you could put it into a formula. This is the final, well, there only maybe one slide after this, then we can speak freely about the tips, techniques, etc. But this is the framework I love to show you, because once you understand the framework, it becomes easier to understand stress, it becomes easier to understand focus, etc., etc. You can put the concentration leaks into a formula, as you can see in the slide. Engagement and energy, or the fuel, makes you resilient. The more engagement, the more engaging the task is, the more energy you have, the more resilient you are against internal stimuli or external stimuli. Meaning, if you're reading a book that's really exciting, you don't hear the environment, right? If you're reading a boring article, once again, a mosquito could easily distract you. Make sense? And the other type, the right part of the formula is the distractions, internal and or external. The whole game is that engagement and energy is higher than internal and external stimuli. This is the game. I love to talk about the technical stuff and the details and the practical tips in a moment. But once again, this is my main goal, that you understand the framework. Arjen, do you have any questions so far that you want to jump in, or want to dive deep into the tips already? More than happy to do it, but I'm just checking with you.
Yeah, great. Well, I think there's a few questions, Mark, already popping in as well. So, well, guys on the audience, please keep them sharing with the form below. But yeah, something that I'm also personally interested in to see this. You're talking about engaging tasks. Well, let's say my administrative tasks during these weeks are not very engaging. So how can I influence this?
So this is a key factor. So you're totally right. If something is engaging by nature, once again, an exciting movie, exciting book, or exciting presentation, it becomes easy to stay focused. But the key question is, how do you do it during a boring conference call? Or someone on the phone speaks really slowly. He or she wants to make a point. You are already there. What do you start doing? Most people start making little drawings. And this is a funny thing that most people do, the doodling, as you might know the term. Doodling, if you make the funny drawings during a conference call or so, it seems like you're distracted or bored. Well, technically, you're the most focused person. The moment you start doodle during a boring presentation or boring webinar or whatever, your engagement, or more specifically, your focus, increases by 29%. How come? You're doing something next to the main task. So if the main task is really boring and you cannot change that, doing something next to it that's really simplistic, walking or making little drawings or folding the laundry or something like it, if possible with your headset, then your engagement increases. What happens, those doodles, it's so simplistic, it doesn't activate any real thing. It's just a little simple drawing, usually the same things over and over again. However, there's just enough brain activity to block out internal distractors. Oh, I have to call so-and-so. Oh, after this meeting, I have to do this and this. And therefore, you have more engagement for the presentation at hand. So this is one way. So technically, I'm talking about multitasking. And I'm saying here, to put some oil on the more fuel on the fuel, multitasking is a great way to enhance your focus, your performance. And this is 180 degrees different than the old way that multitasking is bad. That's not the case. Multitasking is not a bad thing. However, there is a nuance. If you start making those doodles in 3D with shadowing effects during the conference call, then it's tipping over to task switching. Then you're switching your attention from conference call to doodling, conference call to doodling. And once again, the moment you switch, you're out. It's game over. Mm-hmm. So if you want to make the task more engaging, one element of doing that is doing something simple next to the main task that doesn't require your full attention. By doing so, you're making even administration boring task more engaging. Listening to music is one way of doing it, for example.
Cool. So actually, you're one of those pioneers, I would say, that say multitasking is good rather than bad, because these other, let's say, the gurus are telling us that multitasking is a way of ruining your attention.
If you multitask, once again, there might be a definition here. So just to emphasize, just to be clear, multitasking means you're doing walking and talking on the phone is multitasking. Most people can do just fine. Listening to music while working is multitasking. Most people will love it. Not all, but most people will love it. There's a difference, though, if you start listening to your favorite artist on Spotify when it releases a new album, and you start doing that while doing a boring task for work, then you're switching your attention. And once again, when you're switching your attention, it's game over.
So it's kind of a simple, repetitive activity that helps you to fill those gaps.
Exactly, spot on.
Cool. So there's a few questions coming in for the energy part as well. Maybe you are going to present on this as well, but shall I just reach out? Because I think this is quite interesting. Because, well, especially for you, the father of a newborn, energy might be lacking sometimes. And there's two influential factors that people are asking me, and I'm personally interested in as well. One is, how does sleep affect your energy? There's a lot being written and talked about it, but maybe you can share something about that. And the other thing is, how do substances influence your energy? So let's say my energy is low, I take a coffee. My mornings start with coffee, and I think for the majority of people. Can you share something about those?
I love to dive deep. Now we have the framework, now we can dive deep. So yes. Well, first of all, to start with your last question, caffeine and deadlines is the most used focus strategy. Deadlines refers to engagement. If you don't have an hour to do the task, but now only 30 minutes, you're more engaged. The task is more complex, more challenging. So your engagement is high. Caffeine refers to energy. So yes, it helps. The downside of both is it still lingers in your mind when you're done. Stress, once again, it's cortisol. It stays in your body for a while. Caffeine, depending on how frequent you're taking it and how much you're taking it, for sure, stays in your body between 8 and 14 hours. Meaning, if you're depending on substances like coffee or stress, call it a substance here, the downside is it is still in your body when you're at home and want to relax or chill or recharge yourself. And this is interesting. So once again, it is a formula. It's like a wip-wop, how do you call it? It's like it needs to be in balance. It needs to be a little bit higher. The whole game is that engagement and energy is just a little bit higher than internal and external stimuli, which also means that you do not need caffeine or engagement if your internal stimuli is low, meaning you're emptying your mind. I'm more than happy to talk to you how you do it. Or the external stimuli is low, meaning you're having a quiet office. If you work in a quiet environment, it is easier to stay focused because there's less distractions. So it's once again, it's a formula. To dive deep into the first part of your question, or the first question, energy, sleep, and substances, especially sleep. Sleep is really important. Let me emphasize that clearly. Sleep is really important. Make sure you sleep enough, otherwise you're screwed. However, I don't want to say it's overrated, but people depend on it too much. So the framework is usually, okay, work hard, play hard. I work 10 hours straight or 8 hours straight, bare minimum of taking breaks because it feels like a waste. And when I'm at home, I will recharge myself. Or when I sleep enough, I will recharge myself. It's too late. And I believe the next slide, yes, is based on energy. So if you look at the brain, how does your brain recharge itself? Well, sleep is important, exercise is important, we know all the drill, right? Mm-hmm. Let's not dive deep into the standard stuff. But if you look more closely to your brain, there's a specific part of your brain that's crucial to recharge itself. It's called the default mode network. The default mode network, you can compare it to your own gas station in your brain. It's the place in your brain where it recharges itself. Mm-hmm. In order to get to that part of your brain, two things need to happen. First, you cannot take in any new information. The moment you're taking in any new information, it's considered work, and therefore it requires energy instead of recharging itself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The second criteria, focus, what we're having now, hopefully, is that you're engaged in what we're doing. Hopefully it's fun. I like doing it. I hope you like listening to it. However, it requires energy for both of us. We cannot do this all day long. Mm-hmm. So focus requires energy. Defocus is recharging yourself. So the two criteria to recharge your brain, not taking in any new information, and defocus, so deliberately mind wandering, that needs to happen in order to recharge yourself. But now,
using my WhatsApp, defocus or focus, you would say?
Defocus. The defocus is needed in order to recharge yourself. Defocus is needed for focus later on. Mm-hmm. Defocus will make sure you put gas in your brain. Mm-hmm. However, most people, I don't know about you, but most people during a break want to do something fun. Maybe scrolling to WhatsApp, maybe going to a news site, maybe watching a TEDx movie, or social media. It could be considered fun, depending on if you like it or not. That doesn't really matter. But fun and recharging your brain are not the same thing. Once again, if you're taking in any new information, listening to a podcast would be really fun for some people. I like doing it. But once again, you're taking in any new information. So by definition, you're not taking a break. And this is, I think, the key component. So sleep, yes, really important. Once again, let me emphasize that. But if that's your only break during a day, you're screwed. I think a key component for you as an individual and you as an organization, if you want to avoid the dips in productivity, if you want to lower the stress in your organization, a key component is make sure you recharge enough, and more important, recharge in a correct way. Meaning, make sure during a break that you're taking a walk, if possible, once again, during the circumstances here. Or a second best, looking out of the window. Looking out of the window, you're not doing anything, so it might feel unproductive. But being unproductive is sometimes the most productive thing that you can do.
So actually you're saying to increase your focus and productivity, you have to be able to also, during moments in the day, of course, defocus, be unproductive to make sure that you regain your balance and then improve your productivity over time. I mean, that's the start of this idea is let's be more productive and be focused. So we need these breaks.
Yeah, and this is like, this feels so uncomfortable for most people, including myself. I have a drive, I have hunger to do more. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. But it's like, let's say you're in your car, you have 6 appointments by car, you have to drive across the country, and your tank is almost empty. You cannot say, well, I'm really busy today, I'm gonna skip the gas station. I'm just gonna drive on an empty tank. That's physically impossible. That would be weird. But we do exactly the same thing with our brain. Taking breaks is not optional. If you want to take without taking a break, you're in the last part of the flow curve. It takes a lot of energy to squeeze the last drips of productivity out of your orange. It doesn't work that way. Work can be much relaxing and way more productive if you have the courage. I think this is the key word, the courage to take a break.
Cool. Well, we're getting some questions, but I'm also really interested to hear your practical advice and tips. So let's jump into that first, and then we're going to do some live Q&A with the people on the line.
Yeah, so slide-wise, I think this is it. Yeah. So let's let's put this in the middle there. So I'm more than happy to answer all the questions that you might have. What I found interesting and on broader level, I might give some input for the questions. You can look at focus on a personal level, and I'm a big fan to, once again, give all the details. But you can also look at focus on a team level. Focus management for teams I think is a crucial thing. And there you talk about the split between being available and being productive. So nowadays, when you work at home, people want to be available, want to show that they're available to you. So on Slack or Microsoft Teams or Skype for Business on the internal messenger system that you might use, I answer your question immediately to show I'm at work. Mm-hmm. However, meaning if you're available all the time, it means that you're switching your task constantly. I'm working on one task, getting interrupted by a Slack message, answering that question real quick, and going back to work. Switching, and therefore game over. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you cannot ignore the messages, so that's not my point. Definitely, don't get me wrong. But my main point is, as a leader, as working in HR or as a leader within a company, I'm a big fan of starting the conversation. How do we work? Meaning, how fast do I expect you to reply on an email, mm-hmm. or Slack or whatever? And this is one type of question that you can ask. Another type of question is we have different channels. So we maybe have an internal messenger system, we have mail, maybe you have work WhatsApp, maybe your phone, maybe another one. There are 4 or 5 different channels that you might use for urgent messages, for non-so-urgent messages. Mm-hmm. The challenge is if urgent messages can come to you at all 4 channels or all 5 channels, you have to check all 5 of them in order to stay top of the ball, top of the game. So this is very counterproductive. So one type of question that you can ask, and I'm a big fan of doing that, or making agreements, what is our urgent channel? So if there's an urgent message, something is on fire, something needs to be handled straight away, what's the channel that we use? Okay, that could be phone, that could be old-fashioned SMS, that's different than WhatsApp, because how much old-fashioned SMS did you still get? So this is a rare medium. That needs to be a rare medium. So don't choose email. Don't choose Slack or something like it. And so one agreement could be, well, on an urgent message is phone. Just call someone, or old-fashioned SMS, and you need to answer that within 30 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, whatever your line of business is. All the other channels, mail, Slack or whatever, you have to respond within, depending on your work, within 2 hours, within a day, depending on your type of business. But if you're not making any agreements whatsoever between being available and being productive, being available will always win because of drive, because of ambitions, because of hierarchy. If your boss sends you a message, you want to reply instantly. So as a result, you're really busy, but not so productive. So this is one type of questions or agreements that you can make as focus management for teams. Another is, what are our focus chunks or quiet blocks? So every person, especially a knowledge professional who needs to think for their work, needs some quiet time in order to do the real thinking, uninterrupted time. So one thing that you could do is say, on Wednesday, we don't have any meetings, any conference call. That is one type of solution. I don't know if it's suitable, depending totally on your business. I'm just setting here the broad categories, but we can dive into it to make a detailed focus plan for you. But one solution is to don't have meetings on a certain day or a certain time frame. Another thing, and I'm a big fan of quiet blocks or focus blocks. Some organizations like the big firms, a big bank here in the Netherlands, has quiet blocks now on Tuesday between 10 and 12. Between 10 and 12, there are no meetings. You're not calling someone unless it is an urgent matter. So it's not completely quiet, but it's more quiet than normal. You're not compelled to answer an email because that's not the urgent channel. Urgent channel is their phone. So during that one chunk in their week on Tuesday between 10 and 12, it's not completely quiet, but it's more quiet than normal. You're less interrupted than normal, meaning it is easier to dive deep, to do your real thinking task. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a certain chunk of uninterrupted time, it becomes more difficult for you or your employees to do their work. So start that conversation. I'm a big fan of doing that.
So it's kind of a balance between the majority of people are now working from home. Do you say they have to do this at home as well? So I'm sorry, telling my wife, my daughter of 11 months, my cat, I'm closing the door and I'll see you back at 12. Do I get it right?
You don't need to be rude, but so finding a balance here. So I can only talk what my style is, but it's not suitable for everyone because everyone has a different setting, family setting. So in my setting currently, my focus chunks is only 2 hours a day between 1 and 3. And during the other times, I'm doing my light work, my shallow work, so to say. But between 1 and 3, our daughter is asleep. The baby is usually asleep. And I made an agreement with my girlfriend that we're not interrupting each other during this time, unless, once again, it's urgent. So the more basic stuff, who's going for groceries, we're going to eat tonight, all those basic stuff, we do before or after that. It's not how do you call it, a rude environment or a very harsh environment. No, quite the opposite. How often have you done some work, you're almost into the zone and you're interrupted by something simple? It could be really frustrating. By making an agreement with your family in this case, if that's possible, it's not for everyone doable. I totally understand it. This is a line of thinking that I want to introduce because the type of solution might depend per setting, per person, etc. But this line of thinking, I'm a big fan of starting that conversation with your direct family, but the same happens for your coworkers. It's more difficult to do it with clients, but you could say, well, we're closed and not open for business between 1 and 3, but that would be weird. So one thing that I do when I'm working in my focus block, let's say I'm working now on a new chapter for the book, the English version of the book, I have my out of office reply on. So I'm working and I'm still working, but at that moment, you're getting an out of office reply saying, hey, I'm working on my new book or my new chapter of my new book till 3 o'clock. So if it's not urgent, I will answer your email after 3 o'clock. If it's really urgent, it cannot wait, please give me a call. I'm more than happy to answer your question. So once again, it's not completely quiet, but it's more quiet than normal. I'm not interrupted by things that are still need to do, but not urgent. Make sense? So this is a line of thinking that you can explore.
Good. Yeah, I think it makes sense. I'm getting a few nice questions. I'm just going to pop out a few to continue this thinking. So Albertina is actually asking us, which is interesting, reflecting on your earlier point. During a walk or gardening, my mind does not stop thinking about anything. No. Is this defocusing, or do I need to do less?
Well, yes and no. So once again, if you look at the formula, if there's really high engagement, let's say you're doing a sport really intensely, chances that you're not thinking about your to-do list because engagement is really high, therefore it's winning from your to-do list, your internal stimuli. However, if you're not doing anything, let's say you're almost going to bed or simple walk around the garden or doing the gardening, the engagement is very low. Therefore, chances are that internal stimuli will pop up, which is normal. Keep that in mind, which is normal. It could get annoying if it keeps coming back like a boomerang. And I think you're referring to that later part. If that's the case, it is really helpful that before you're going on a real break, that you first empty your mind. And it sounds like a complex thing. In essence, it's really simplistic. Just write it down. You might know Getting Things Done, David Allen. He's the thinking father of Getting Things Done. He has a beautiful quote. Your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. Your mind works like a reminder system. It keeps reminding you of things at the most inappropriate moments. The moment you want to fall asleep, it keeps reminding you of the things that you need to do tomorrow or the things you didn't do this day. That could be annoying because it keeps coming back. There's no stop to it. One way of stopping it is writing it down on paper or digital, doesn't really matter. In this case, there's no difference. But by writing it down, it's almost putting it into cement. You're making it fixed. So you're not losing the intensity about the thought, the emotion, or the task. But the only thing that you're stopping is the loop. You're cutting it through the loop. And therefore, it becomes way more chilled and relaxed. So my recommendation would be, if you find it difficult to fall asleep, before you go to bed, make sure you empty your mind first. Once again, a simple notebook will do the thing. note block will do the thing. Or once again, making notes in your to-do list or in your phone will do is good enough. It's not per se a to-do list, it's almost a pre-to-do list. The main goal is to emptying your mind, to having a place where you can find it the next day. You can do it before going to sleep or before taking a break. If you're taking a break, like going for a walk, first habit, my recommendation, first habit is draw down all the things that are spinning in your mind. Maybe 2 things, 3 things, maybe 5 things or more. Doesn't really matter. Just put them on paper and then go for your walk. It's way more relaxed to do it that way.
Cool. Now the same question then, but well, let's say on a different level. Carlijn, she's asking us, so task switching has become a normal behavior. Mm-hmm. How do you stop task switching? Do you have any tips to unlearn task switching?
Sorry, you the connection was not good. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So the question is actually, task switching has become a normal behavior. I mean, the moment I cycle to the office, don't tell the police, but yeah, you look at your phone, you listen to a podcast, you're doing 3 things at once, you look around you here in the city, you see all kinds of stuff. Now, her question actually is, how do you stop task switching, or do you have tips to unlearn that, to focus on the one task at hand?
Yeah, you have to unwind it, because it is really addictive. Every time we switch, 2 chemicals are released. One is dopamine, and dopamine is the happy chemical. Every time something is new, no matter the content, so a new email enters your world, it enters your inbox, no matter the content, could be good, could be bad. The reason it's new is exciting. Oh, let's see, is it good or is it bad? So that releases the chemical dopamine. It also releases the chemical cortisol. No matter the content, but every switch releases the chemical cortisol, the stress hormone. The challenge is you don't feel the stress hormone because it is masked by the dopamine. So that's the reason why you're not feeling it. But dopamine, since it's a happy thing, is really addictive. It is addictive to switch. And in the old days, when we were a caveman, it was a good thing. It helped our brain to explore the world, to get out of our caves and do new things. It was a good thing. But it's the same reason why halfway through an Excel file, we can think, hey, let's go to CNN.com to see if I missed anything. We're switching because we need the chemical. It's really addictive. So in order to answer your question, in order to get rid of the need or the urge to switch all the time, you need to rewire your brain a bit. And in the beginning, it feels awkward. One way of doing it is the notification challenge. The notification challenge means that only 2 applications are allowed to have notifications. All the other are switched off. So in my personal case, I have turned on SMS, old-fashioned SMS notification, and my agenda notification. Hey, I have a conference call in 5 minutes. All the other notifications, including WhatsApp, is turned off. If you start doing that for a week, in the beginning, it feels really awkward. In the beginning, it feels like itchy almost. I want to check my phone. After 2-3 days, you get rid of the urge and then feeling a sense of calmness. And then you get starting rewiring your brain. So this is one way of doing it. This is one approach. The second approach is similar. What most people do when they're getting awake, they're getting out of bed, the first thing that they do is checking their phone. Yeah. The dopamine is an exciting chemical. Therefore, it can really help you to get awake, almost like coffee. The downside is it's the dopamine. You can compare it to sugar. The more you take it, the more you want it. Meaning, if you start checking your phone early in the morning, you're starting the cycle, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Meaning, it becomes more and more difficult to resist during the day to check your phone. So, if you start checking your phone and checking for messages the first hour you're awake, it's almost not game over, but it's become really difficult to focus. So if you want to set up yourself for focus and reducing your stress, increase your focus, productivity, another challenge is not checking your phone the first hour that you're awake. I hope this helps.
Cool. Thanks. Well, very practical tips. There's a question about the tips we gave earlier just to check from Krista. She's asking us, so just to know, listening to a podcast during a run or a walk is not being unproductive, or watching Netflix or reading a book, is that defocusing or not? So
Yeah,
If
interesting
we're
question.
taking new
Sorry,
information.
yeah. Sorry, come again.
Yeah, so are these activities
Yeah.
that we see as relaxing, let's say,
Yeah.
actually taking in new information? Should we all start to stare out of the window to actually give our brain a break?
It sounds boring, right?
Well, it
So
does, I guess, for a lot of people.
yeah, well, this is the challenge. Fun and recharging is not a synonym. So it's not the same thing. So we usually think, oh, I like listening to a podcast, so I'm giving myself a break. I did something really hard, something really intense. I like my work, but it was intense. So I'm allowed to do something fun. Oh, I like listening to a podcast. I like watching TEDx movies. Blah, blah, blah. So let's do that. But fun and recharging is not the same thing. The moment you're taking in any new information, by definition, you're not taking a break. The moment compared to bytes to categories. Just had a conversation about infobesitas. The need to fill our brain with stimuli like new info. Once again, it is fun, but it is not healthy to do it on an ongoing basis.
Mhm.
Well, there is a difference. So this, I'm saying it now black and white. In essence, is a grayscale. So if you're watching a documentary about your line of work, that could be considered more work than watching a simple series like Friends or something like that. So there's a difference. I totally get that. But and taking a nap is also not taking any new information. So I get that. But my main point is build during your day, build some recharge moments in for yourself. And you have to deliberately plan those if you're like most people. Because if you're like most people, you're finally into the zone, you want to extend it, you want to keep going, you want to go on and on and on. But at some point, like the flow curve, you're in the last part of the cycle, and therefore it's not effective anymore. So you have to deliberately stop yourself. And another question is then, how often do you need to recharge yourself? Well, depending on the type of task that you're doing. If you're doing simple stuff, or you're, maybe say, a batch of simple emails or simple Excel files or whatever is simple for you, but a simple task, then it works best in an interval called the Pomodoro Technique: 25 minutes of focus, 5-minute break. 25 minutes of focus, 5-minute break. That works brilliant. However, the Pomodoro Technique is totally useless when it is more complex stuff. If you're working in a more complex task, then it's way better to work in chunks of 50 minutes and a 10-minute break. And if it's really complex, 90 minutes, 50-minute break. So this is the interval. And once again, this is the broad version. Normally we give you a one-day training with a personalized focus plans. I'm giving you the broader sense of how it works, but you can fine-tune it for yourself, what works for you. But this is the line of thinking I want to introduce, like, how do you recharge and how often do you recharge? And only sleeping is way too late.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so on a different topic, I'm looking at the time as well, but I think this is quite interesting also for our viewers on the HR side. We're now easing our lockdown procedure. People are going back to the office, the new office, let's say. I mean, 1.5 meters of distance. We cannot sit together anymore. You're a brain expert. You talked about the open office, which is not really helping you to focus. Do you think that we're ever going to go back to an open office environment? I mean, in terms of Corona and focus, it's the worst combination.
Well, sure. And I have a quote that an open office is the most expensive office that there is. Okay. Because yes, you're saving on square meters, so that's the house fasting cost is less. However, it has a very significant negative effect on productivity and sick leave. In one study, it was even 62% more sick leave. I'm stumbling over my words here. In an open office, is mind-boggling. If someone is talking on the phone next to you, your productivity drops at least 32%. At least it's mind-boggling. So I'm not a medical expert, so I cannot say in relation to Corona and relieving the lockdown step by step how that's affecting the open office. However, from a focus point of view, I will definitely see a decline in an open office. It's not effective. You could work in an open office, once again, depending on the Corona approaches here. I'm leaving that on the side because that's not my expertise. But you can still work in an open office if you're having agreements on focus. How do you focus for yourself? So you're You're knowing your own concentration leaks and which is dominant for you. You have your own personal focus plan, but also you're making agreements with your team. How do we work? How far? There's a lot of things that you can ask, but one topic is indeed, how often do we need to reply on email? What's your urgent channel? How often are you allowed to take a break? Those type of questions is really important, I think, to do. And as a management, I think it's your responsibility to arrange it. As compared to a painting shop. As a painting shop, the owner is responsible that his or her painters have the right brushes and the best paint. As a knowledge organization, what is the requirement for knowledge professionals to do that work? They need to think. In order to think, you need focus. Improving focus is the best way to increase your productivity and mainly to lower stress and lower sick leaves. And I think that's almost your duty to facilitate it.
So it's kind of an urgent call, guys, everyone on the line, to also rethink not only the physical presence, I guess, if I hear you correct, Mark, but also how do we work together? How do we make it happen once we all come out of the lockdown and go back to our daily jobs?
Yeah, and this is something that you can do by yourself. And once again, we're giving a lot of online trainings in this. But this is something what I hope in this hectic and intense times, that we start the conversation together as an organization, the organization that you're in. How do we work and how do we want to work? And I hope take focus into consideration, because it's once again the best way to improve productivity, but mainly to reduce stress. And that's an epidemic now, other than the coronavirus.
Wow. Serious thoughts. I can imagine that this relates to the, well, let's say predictions about burnout, etc. as well. Then, I mean, if we're talking about higher stress levels, usually...
Yeah, what I found fascinating, if you talk about work pressure, about stress or burnouts, they're huge terms, or big terms. But what's it actually mean in your brain? Well, we found out there are only 4 things that happens if you're having a burnout, having stress, or having a low productivity. There are personality items. I'm not a psychologist in that sense. I'm not diving deep in that topic, but purely looking at the brain, only 4 things. The 4 concentration. It's too much external stuff, too much internal stuff, less few, or too less engagement. And what I found fascinating and what I really love about my job is that we give you a model as HR or as a leader or as a person, as an individual. We give you a model to work with, to make it, in Dutch, tastbaar, I don't know the English equivalent, make it easier to steer in place of, I don't know, I'm burnout or stress. It's too fake almost. And focus is one way, of course, there are more ways, but this is one way to have actual things that you control or play with. And it makes it easier, especially HR, to steer, this is going on with that person. This is the reason why he or she is on the edge of a burnout, instead of the fake terms of burnout, stress, etc.
Yeah, well, thanks for that as well. I'm really sorry to say that we're out of time. We're still receiving a few questions. We're going to see if we can answer them in kind of a, let's say, publication or a blog post or maybe a future interview. For now, I really want to thank you for your expert opinion in this and sharing your views and the very easy to understand practical model of keeping focus and remaining productive during this challenging times for many of us. As a call for next week, I promise we have a few new speakers lined up, so I'm really happy to share a few of that. So for next week, we'll have Ricardo Troiano. He's the head of organizational development at Syngenta. They're a global seed producing and agricultural company working in over 90 countries, and they're using employee listening to understand their most critical audience to guide their future decision-making and strategy. So Ricardo will share his views on how do we make sure that we as a company remain agile in a changing environment, and how does it influence our developments on culture, for instance, and cultural initiatives. So really interesting. Same time, 2:00 on Thursday. Then the week after that, we'll have the head coach of the Dutch Olympic hockey team. She's called Alison Annen. I'm really proud of having her in the broadcast and the webinar as well. I'm a hockey player, so that makes sense maybe. But she achieved some huge things during being a head coach, winning the Olympics, And I think it's a massive blow, of course, that the Olympics are postponed or cancelled. So how do you remain optimistic? How do you keep your performance high? And she will share with us how to perform under pressure as a player, but also as a coach, as a leader. So she will share the lessons for leadership as well. So these are two of the people. You can find many more on our website. Please look them up. And you can find all the webinars, the previous broadcasts that we did, also on the Effectory YouTube channel. So we're more than happy to see you there as well. Finally, we will share this webinar with you in an email link so you can look it back up, share it with your friends, family, colleagues, some very practical and good advices from Mark. And then I'm really happy to see you guys back next week when Ricardo Troiano is our guest. Okay, have a good week.